Welcome to Mediumship Moments with psychic medium Kim Durham. Join her as she shares her personal journey with mediumship, connects with your loved ones, and discusses topics dealing with spirituality.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediumship Moments. I'm your host, Kim Durham, psychic medium, second-gen psychic medium. And today I am thrilled to have a very special guest with me. I have with us Susan Allen. She's an animal communicator and a medium. And welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Kim. So lovely to be here.
I really am excited about our chat today. I tried not to do too much of a deep dig on you. And I say that, or deep dive, because I love the conversation to flow freely. And your energy is just fantastic to do that with the conversations that we've had prior. And I'm just really, really excited. So let's get into it. So today I want to talk about your journey, right? You know, as an intuitive healer and a medium, and the journey that you embarked in your teen years. If you could just, briefly give me some background into how you work or the influence in your career path. Give me an idea of what that journey looked like early on.
Well, super early on, Kim, my grandfather, religious Catholic, would tell me the stories of the saints. And I would just be like in awe. I'd feel like that. I'd feel like I was brought into the spirit world just by these amazing stories with his heavy Italian accent and telling me about all the saints and the mysticism of the church, which, I wouldn't say that I'm a church person, but I would say that my influence was talking to my grandfather. That was first. And later I started to study with a mysticism teacher that held private classes in New York City. And I just adored her. And I didn't know that it was taking me on a journey. Seriously, second generation Italian immigrant family. We're about work, get a job. This doesn't mean anything. Don't pay attention to the messages. So it wasn't really until many, many years later that I discovered my abilities. Although, my mother saved my life from the spirit world 6 months after she passed. I was in the middle of an ectopic pregnancy and I just took 2 Tylenol and I was going to sleep. And she was in the room screaming, "Get to the emergency room." And it never dawned on me that I was a medium at that point. And I just made it. I just made it to the emergency room. She saved my life from the spirit world.
And that's just, okay. So let me just, because that's amazing in itself. I mean, so here you are, second generation Roman Catholic Italian. Your grandfather's introducing you to all the saints and talking about a higher power in our lives that looks over us, or that we can look to for some guidance. And then growing up in that kind of household, how was your mom with the idea of the saints and or mysticism or spirituality? Was there any link between that and...
No, there's no link to her. There's a link to my dad's mother, who didn't speak a lick of English, who I understood babysat me when I was an infant. And she was very mediumistic, but she was terrified of it. So she shut it down. That's what's to me by my dad's brother, because this does run in families.
It absolutely does. Duke University's done studies on it. It follows the maternal side. So it makes total sense that your mom's mom had this ability. And it's often seen, unfortunately, to be that we're something that we're supposed to be fearful of. So do you think that played a role with your mom?
Yeah. Oddly, it was my father's mother that had the ability.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, my mother was just very much into art and like wanting me to pursue things that I didn't really resonate with. And I did it because she wanted me to pursue it. And I never, ever resonated with any of these things. And it was mostly like fashion and modeling and the beauty world. And I wasn't into it at all, but I just wanted to make my mom happy. I just wanted my mom happy as a little kid. And she had passed away when I was 26, and I wasn't really getting the messages that I was needing. It took many, many years later. I had this cute little French bulldog that I fell in love with and was like the moon, the stars, and the sun in my life. And I just thought, well, healing from a hip replacement that I needed in my early 50s because I was an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, didn't want to stress myself with my day job, which I was a real estate agent in LA, and it was a really cool job. And my brother in New York, who I accredit to like saving my life as a little girl, because he was like my everything. The one who lives in Rehoboth that I told you about.
Yeah.
And he's my everything. He's like my father, mother, and sister and brother.
All wrapped up into one.
Yeah, I called him and I go, I'm so stressed out. And he goes, Susie, you aren't going to heal from this surgery. If you need a mindless, silly, take a class. And right away, what popped up is an animal intuition class with Joan Ranquette. And it was, I think, 4 classes. And she opens, I'm on my iPad. This is like 22 years ago. And I'm on my iPad. And she sends us photos of her pets. So that's, how she can verify, because she's on the iPad with 10 strangers. And she sends us these photos and she goes, okay, close your eyes, let your weirdo go. And when you open your eyes, start journaling what the pet is saying. And I kid you not, it was like a Technicolor Disney movie. And I don't consider myself like a writer at heart, although I love telling stories. I could not believe what I journaled. And it was all about her horse that stuck his head in a water bucket. And he was telling me, no, it wasn't my nose. It was I detailed this reading. And before I knew it, everybody in the class was calling me. And for reading. And that's kind of,
that's
yeah.
Right. So this journey this journey towards mediumship started with this class, studying with is it Joan Ranquette?
Joan Ranquette.
Yeah,
yes,
Joan
I
Ranquette.
studied with her.
So,
and then you'll go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's okay. I know there's a lot to cover, and I promise you we'll do it. It's interesting because I find it interesting. There's a lot of similarities between you and I that you may not be aware of. And I lovingly tease, I've been talking to animals longer than I've been talking to people, right? Because of my connection and things that have happened to me. So I find this really fascinating. So here you are, you've moved out from New York City where you first herald, and then out to California. And then you were out in California when your mom crossed?
No, I was still in New York.
Okay.
I waited several years.
Until after, okay. And then come out to California. At that time, were you you were working in real estate and needed some downtime? Or was that?
Yeah, it was actually a Ford.
I was going to say
a Ford
model at the time.
I was a Ford model. I couldn't stand it. I left Ford. They were like, "Why are you leaving?" And I'm like, it's just not. I'm not into this.
As you said, you were doing it more for your mom than really your path.
Yeah, and it was making me miserable. I just didn't like it.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than we've all, to my listeners out there, I'm sure you've all been in a job where you're just like, oh, it's sucking the life out of me and I need to get out of there, right? It's a self-preservation that you need to change your course. And how wonderful that your brother is just like, okay, you need to take a class, you need to step back, you maybe need to reset. Is he one to be open to this field as well? Or was it just, yeah?
He loves me and he loves my videos and he loves my work. And I was begging him to go see you in Rehoboth. I said, look, I'll buy the tickets. Take
really?
Michael.
Okay.
Just go. It's amazing. I want you to see her work in real life. I want you to see this kind of work. And that's how I discovered you, because I got this email or text or Instagram. You were in Rehoboth and I was like, I got to get my brother.
How funny is that, Susan? I had no idea. That is funny. That how we ended up linking.
Yeah, he tries to figure it out, even though I set him up once with a medium. He was like, how would he know all that? Like, it's still, he's into like this world of psychology. So on some level, he must think that there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason. But he's more open now because he sees, what I'm doing at the extent that I'm doing it and how many people that we help doing this work.
Right. Exactly. And so it is. When you talk about the help and the healing part of it, that's to me It's what drives me. I mean, my background in nursing, obviously it's all about healing. But when you took the class and you had this epiphany, right, Susan, and you had all of this happening, then that led you to be known and quite well known for your remarkable work with animal communication. Tell me about the story about Leo the horse.
Leo the horse, that was all like entwined with this class. It was really, really interesting. So I couldn't ride because I needed this hip surgery, right? My first hip replacement. And I would just go up and love on Leo, and I would just massage him and groom him and give him like 3 or 4 pounds of carrots. He was a famous massage horse, and he had an owner. And he had people leasing him for the show ring. So I couldn't ride. So I just went up and we would call it loving on Leo.
Perfect.
And I would work on him, and he downloaded to me. When I say downloaded, I mean, for all intents purposes, it feels like it's in your head, like telepathy. And he goes, "This is what I want you to do. Put your hands on my back legs." And I did. And they were boiling hot. And he said, "Just leave them there." And I did. And then they became cold. And he was teaching me how to heal. There was no Reiki at that point, but I was studying. And I thought, these people are going to think I'm nuts. There's cameras everywhere. It's this really high-end dressage barn in Malibu, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't afford to have a horse there in training. They just knew me because I used to take lessons from the head trainer. And it was before she became famous because of Leo. And I go, "Jane, I can't ride." She goes, "Just come up and love on Leo." And nobody was there. And I just thought, these people, if they see me on video, I'm crying. I'm like so into this, you know, and it would be like a 2-hour process. And right before my surgery, I said, "Hey, buddy, if you don't lower your head and let me kiss you," because he was this ginormous horse, so big.
He was probably 17 hands high.
Oh my God, huge.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't lower his head for hours until he got everything he needed from me. And I said, "I can't stand anymore. I got to go." And I say it because in an instant, as you know, they feel, hear everything. It's like fast. He lowered his head, he closed his eyes, and his ears came forward. And I nearly like fainted. I'm like, this is really happening. I still wasn't in belief of this. So then when I get done with the surgery, by now I took the class with John Ronquette, and I was still like, am I really doing this? Is this really a thing? I go up with a composition notepad and I'm journaling everything he's saying, and I'm writing down everything. And then I see the woman that leases him for the show ring. She rides him and gets the blue ribbons and everything. And I tell her everything that this horse said to me. And I'm really tired at this point because I'm just post-surgery and I just want to get home. But I write everything and I read it to her. She gets white like a ghost. She runs to her car, runs over to me and shoves a bunch of cash in my hand. And she said, "You have a gift. You must pursue this." This is how this whole thing started.
Oh, this is wonderful. I mean, truly, this is a wonderful story.
She's still a client, and she's like in her 80s now and still rides horses.
I love it. I love it. I grew up riding, and I find horses just fascinating. Yes. Yeah. They're humans on 4 legs. I'll say that. And I have a client, pardon me. I have a dear friend, Tina Scudo, who actually is going to be a guest coming up on my podcast as well, who deals with horses in Carefree, Arizona. She has a center that she does healing with horses. So and just the exchange of the energy and when they're yawning. I mean, truly. And I come from the scientific background myself, where I'm like, okay, wait. And she'll tease with me. She goes, "Kim, we're a little woohoo out here." And I said, "I know, but I come from." If anything, she's opened my eyes that just because I didn't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You know,
yes.
and that just that simple. But it's amazing that, so Leo is really the catalyst behind you doing this. Now, Here's a question I want to ask you, Susan. When you communicate, because you said about it being fast and a download, so you're picking this up, claircognizancy, and they're telepathically communicating with you, right? Do you see the words, or do you hear them clairaudiently, like in your inside inner ear?
I think inner ear, and then they either do a movie in my head or paint a picture. Like if I'm talking to a deceased pet, it's all the same. That's why I always said, are they living or deceased? Because I see them as living because they're a soul. And it's kind of all that. I don't like, they're not in my office on my desk.
Okay.
That's what, yeah, they're just like, it's almost like they play out the whole movie and then they're talking to me.
Because I'm interested, because there's not many of us, and I say that not to be, but that both do animal communication and spirit communication, communicating with your loved ones. And so my question.
Yeah, and by the way,
go
I
ahead.
loved one of your animal readings. One of your animal readings was amazing. With I was watching it on Instagram. I was like, oh my God, she's doing it. She's doing this animal work. I love it so much.
Oh, thank you. They are our babies, and I'm blessed that, like I said, I've been chatting with them longer than real. I've been tripping over. I tell the story, right, when I was a newbie in the surgery field, and a new surgeon had invited us over to her home. And so I show up, we're going to have pizza. I bring a bottle of wine. Well, I ended up tripping over this dog that came running past me. I said, oh my God, I almost stepped on, and his knee subluxing, which is a big ortho word for meaning his knee popped out. Well, here, that surgeon, I said it looked like a little greyhound, lost her Italian Whippet 3 years earlier, who had, in fact, that issue with the knee. And that's when I was working in surgery. Right. So that's, those experiences, but, they're with us. And for so many people who choose to have those fur babies as their children, that's their family. And I'm not one. I mean, that connection continues. So I just find it interesting and I found it lovely that you do animal work as well. Now, do you work?
Yep.
Do you go out? Because I've had the experience, and I wanted to ask you about this. Have you gone out and worked with horses at ranches? I've had the opportunity to work with a vet who's brought me in situations because of seeing healing. Like I see healing on people like a salt lamp, but black spots on people are places in need of healing. So I see that on animals as well. Have you used your ability with communication, like you had said about the boiling and communicating? Do you do that work and go out to equestrian centers or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have private clients that invite me to work on their horses. I live on horse property, and I don't have any of my own right now, but I'm surrounded.
Okay.
But all my neighbors have them. So I look down my backyard and there's horses walking back, and I've worked on one of hers, and we kept her 38-year-old horse alive many years.
Is that the one with the problem with the hoof in the front?
Yeah.
The Appaloosa?
That's exactly.
Or the spotted one?
Yes.
Okay.
But he's deceased.
Yes.
Now. But yes, went out and worked on him. Not sure that neighbor really believes what I do, but we kept him. He was my little angel. I love this. So we had
You had an amazing connection with this animal.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks.
Listen, I'm not trying to. This isn't about me. This is about you. But
no,
I see that. I see the horse with you. It's a darker gray spotted, and it talked about the issues of its feet or its hoof or its
the front hoof. And then I had another Appaloosa that was the love of my life that I leased from a trainer. That man, oh man, I would just spend, when I was with that horse, I remember my ex-husband said, you have no friends left. You're always with the horse. And I said, I invite everybody to the ranch. Nobody wants to come. Like I didn't care about people. I cared about him. That was many, many years ago. So yes. And I relate to what you said, because about being in surgery and going to their house, because real estate almost became impossible for me because of my sensitivity. Because I would go into houses and feel things that I didn't want to feel. And I didn't understand. I thought I was just an anxious person. This is what was fed to me. But I remember going in homes and people looking at me and saying, my dog doesn't act like that. And what's happening? Like the dog would sit on my lap.
Right.
Or get on top of the couch and wrap itself around my shoulders. It would all be odd. But I it felt natural for me. Like I was like, yeah, sure. Your dog doesn't act like this. Come on. I'm used to this in nature, animals with, like, just the other night, we were at an outdoor event, and we saw a tree rat with round ears, and he was struggling, and he literally, the cutest little thing I've ever seen. And he just got on top of my husband's shoe, and he stayed there, and I worked on him, and I hope he's okay. We got him to scurry off, but we didn't leave that rat until he was ready to leave us.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about saving animals and things of that nature. My mom was quite known. Yes, she was a psychic medium, but early on in her years, my grandmother talks about she never knew what Joan was going to come in the door with. My mom saved all kinds of animals. And in fact, growing up, quick little story, we had a pool and we had cover on the pool, and we had just taken the cover off. So it was early May, mid-May. And there was a duck that was wounded that landed in our pool. And here's my mom cleaning its wounds and tending to it. And here I am going to the local pharmacy for the prescription for duck Durham. True story. Because she was all about healing and taking care of animals. And so I just find it endearing that that people that work in this field and also work with animals, I think it makes you that much more special, Susan. I'll say that. Now I have you're well. It's true. It's true. When you have that heart to heart or soul to soul connection that you talk about,
yeah,
right. That to me obviously transcends species, if you will. Is there a distinct approach when you connect with animals versus people? I know I kind of asked that, but is there, when you sit with somebody to communicate with an animal, is your prep work, and I say that, how you set up to do that, or your mindset different than people?
I don't think so. I was doing animals way longer than people. Dead people just started coming into my animal readings. And then I thought, if the dead people are going to come in so gentle and loving, I could do this. I can handle it. Because I wasn't looking for this, like you weren't. Here you had a career. I had a really decent career in real estate. My husband was like, please don't tell anybody you talk to animals.
Yeah, we're all closeted mediums for a while, aren't we?
So it wasn't until my dog died that I thought, if I can make it through the death of my Rosie, I am strong enough to come out on a platform and embrace this as a full-time job now.
Yes. So do you have a funny story about connecting with an animal or connecting with a person and an animal, connecting with an animal and person showed up? You want to share with us?
I don't know how funny it is, but it's one that's a heart one. Do you want a heart-centered?
I would love a heart-centered.
So this woman calls me for a reading, and here she is in the back of her beauty salon in Florida with all these foils in her head, completely forgetting she even had a reading with me. And it was kind of cute, and she was so sweet. And she goes, oh my God, please excuse the way I look. She had this long hair with all this fancy foiling. And I said, no worries, spirit will come in. She goes, I'm in like the back of my beauty salon. And I said, okay. And unbeknownst to me, she was probably 49 at this point with, grown children, teenagers and college kids. But when they were all little, she said that she told me after the reading, she had a really, really horrible, aggressive breast cancer, and they put her on the worst chemo ever, the heavy duty stuff. And she said she just cried and cried in her bedroom, and she asked her grandfather for a sign. And I'll just fast forward to the reading. I said, why is your grandfather here? And he's got a parrot on his shoulder. And she just burst into tears. And she said, when I asked my grandfather for a sign, this amazing, huge parrot shows up on my balcony and stares at me. The day she was on the worst of this chemo. And she said, I knew looking at that parrot that he had heard my prayer and he was going to help me. And fast forward, 20 years later, she's doing this reading with me, and she ends up being one reading. I end up going to Lourdes with her.
Really?
And then, it was the most amazing thing. And her mother drives through the Pyrenees Mountains from Spain to meet me and meet us. And I'm at Lourdes, and it was, I'm not a religious person. I was, growing up, and when my mother died, I was going to church every day. But I just wasn't a religious person. And I'm in Lourdes, and I kid you not, I just get a message. And I'm told it's from the Blessed Mother to her, because she's prayed. She's so religious Catholic, this girl. And she's the love of my life. We're very close now. And I just said to her, she's here, but she cannot show herself because it would create a panic. And the girl looks at me, her name's Monica, and she goes, that's what all the nuns say that work here. She is here for all these people blessing. It's a very special place. The little town itself has this raging river. The energy is the most, I was so blessed to go with her. And it was just like one reading. And the next thing I know, I'm on a plane to meet her in Paris, and then we drove to Lourdes. That's no kidding. That was no kidding. Just from this subtle message, this amazing friendship blossomed. From this subtle message that her grandpa came in with a parrot, it meant so much to her, And that's the kind of readings I do. That's spirit-centered, where it may not mean anything to me, but it would mean something to the person, right? That's why we do this.
Right. It's that symbolic, or the connection, or, the information that we impart, or you impart, if it makes your heart feel good. And I mean that, not that, if it answers yes to your heart question, right? Or validates something growing up, then that's all we can ask for. Now, you talked about the loss of animals and what that's like, and how challenging it is, because really any loss is. Have you how would you, let me put it this way. Do you have any tips on how someone could communicate with their fur baby on the other side?
Well, that's a good question. Just talk to it like you would talk to it when it was living. That's everything,
Treat them as they're still here.
Yeah, you just talk to them like I still talk to Rosie. I have pictures everywhere. I think she was like the impetus to push me out the door, because she really showed me who I really was, helped me remember who I really was. Because that love of a pet. And it's so funny, because I was helping so many people with pet loss and ends of life and transitioning their pet to the spirit world, and helping them and supporting them. And my own dog then passes away. And I never had grief like that in my life, not even when my mother passed away, believe it or not. And it could just be whatever you call it, a recuperation, whatever that word is, like,
right,
of earlier stages of grief that you've had. Yes, but that one dog, when it passes, it just can shatter you. And it took, I did readings within 3 weeks, and I thought, I hope I could do this. And it was like, I was able, the spirit world steps in, and my grief goes to the side, and I was just continually helping people again. But it gave me a new level of how surreal it is for people when they do have a pet that crosses to the spirit world.
That connection, and you touched upon something, and before I forget, I wanted to ask you that. The transitioning from the physical to the spiritual world, and that you actually have been there. I, as a nurse, and then as a medium, have been asked to sit bedside with people when they're transitioning from the physical to spiritual world. What is that like as an animal communicator? How do you assist with that, or what does that look like for someone who's never been there?
I've worked with several clients that were so frightened because they had that deep love like I have with Rosie. And we would just set up a couple of sessions, like right before the transition.
Okay.
And we knew it was coming, so I would just relay the messages that I was getting from their pet. And it's almost like they tell us, and then we feel so bad if we end up euthanizing them because we think it's our fault or something. I'll just give you a quick one if you want a quick side story. So I was one of the last real estate deals I did, I was waiting for the escrow officer to call me to tell me we closed escrow. And I called her and I said, did we close? And she goes, you must be psychic. Well, actually, I am. I'm an animal communicator. And she goes, oh my God, I'm setting up an appointment. And she sent me a picture of her English bulldog. And he was coming in, saying, I really couldn't breathe. I wasn't feeling well, and giving me a demonstration of all the tricks he did and his backyard and his ramp. And they taught him everything, and how his dad would feed him filet mignon right off the barbecue that she later. And she was sitting with all this grief and not realizing that animal communication was a thing, because she thought she put this dog to sleep too soon and maybe he had some more time. And here she's sitting with this love of this animal, that predates her births of her children. So that's really her first baby. Just the validation that I gave her to help close that sadness and that reluctancy, and thinking, we aren't really playing God. They really are pushing us to help them cross over. And I'm not saying like euthanize a pet that doesn't need euthanization. Like, use your vet's help, use your discernment. But we kind of know, but then we doubt ourselves and then we torture ourselves. And that is not what our pets want. They want us to remember their life. They're jumping through the air with frisbees. They're doing silly things, not the last moments of their life or the last 6 months of their life when they've completely gone downhill, because that brings your vibration down and their vibration down. And then they kind of like worry about us more.
Right. Well, and it's, you bring up good points about that. Cause we're on our 4th Airedale in our household, and my dear vet had said it is best to help them over the Rainbow Bridge a day early than a day late. And it's true. It's
great fit.
It's
what
true.
A great fit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've been honored to be there when my fur babies, we've had them cross the Rainbow Bridge at home. And that is so special for the family and other loved ones being there. And it's a sad time, but personally, I've had my dog. It was interesting. I had a little Chloe. Now, picture a teeny weeny Airedale. They're usually, 45, 50 pounds. She was 37 pounds soaking wet. God love her, with her little chicken chest and Alf ears. Alf ears. She was not the prettiest Airedale ever, but she was all mine. And when she crossed the Rainbow Bridge, about a week later, I was sleeping in bed, and I was, just dozing, just about to doze off. And I heard this woof out of the corner of our bedroom to the right-hand side. And I look over, and all I saw was her mushka, otherwise known as her terrier face, with her whiskers kind of up, like she had just rubbed herself on the leather couch after she had dined. And she barked at me, and I just saw her.
I just feel like
and then
ready.
and she faded away, and that was her, I believe, letting me know that she made it on the other side, and that I'm okay, Mom. And that to me made it okay for me to do pet communication, to share with everyone that our loved ones, both physically and the fur babies, are still with us, and that they continue to be a part of our life in some way. So like you said, keep talking to them. This work can be so challenging, this field, and taxing, both physically and mentally. How do you find a balance in the work that you do?
Animals or people? What do you think is more challenging?
That's a great question. It's interesting. I love doing pet communication. I find, and not to be twist, I find joy in it. Not that I don't with people, but there's a certain level of joy with it. And then I do something a little extra special, is that I pair, when I do my Over the Rainbow Bridge events, I give a portion of the proceeds to a local shelter of some sort. And so the last one I just did with hospice care for adult animals, for the gray-haired girls, bearded girls. And but I enjoy both. I'd have to say people are more challenging. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Because the energy is more dense when you're, I feel like when I'm talking to an animal, it's so flowing because it's not that I'm ignoring my sitter because I know the grief and the pain, but they're giving me so much beauty and evidence and evidence and evidence. And it feels better. And then, we kind of like can assimilate that easier. And just like when I'm with a person, if they have what I call the stronghold on who they want to talk to, that person is coming in, but it's usually the last 10 minutes of the reading because there's so much grief and there's so much, I got to talk to this one. I got to talk to this one. And I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. Let go now. Let go. And I recently worked with a young girl who lost her mother, and it was her grandfather comes in to help the mother come in. And it was, because the mother hasn't come in. And she's like, was not interested in hearing from the grandfather. And I didn't understand the link yet that I was getting. Because she's like, well, that sounds like my grandfather, but I never met him. And I'm like, okay, but he's not talking. And that's how I know he's linking me to her mother.
Interesting. Okay.
And the mother came in, she was just off and running, and it was the girl's first reading. And when I first opened the camera, she had everything crossed, her arms, her legs. And I said, is this thing? And she says, yes. And I said, do me a favor, take a couple of breaths. My head doesn't turn around and spin. Like I work with the light. It's going to be nice.
When you talk about that, when they come through like that, for me, I often say, listen, the first one up to the microphone may not be the person you want to talk to. I never know who's on the spiritual plane. I said, so don't drop the curtain of, I don't want to talk to, don't shift your energy because they may link and bring somebody else through. So keep an open heart and an open mind. But yeah, that's the one thing that I've never gotten, and it's absolutely true, with talking with an animal. You won't get that barrier of energy that you get, right, when you sit with people. Absolutely not. It's much more free-flowing. But just to circle back, how do you take care of Susan? How do you find a balance or fill your joy tank from doing this work?
I love that question. I'm finding more of a balance. As time goes on, I still get stuck. It's not easy. It's not easy work. People don't realize how hard it is on your body and your heart. I did a gallery of 8 where I have 8 people. And this one woman was like, no, no, no. And I felt like I was wading through concrete. And I really knew there were messages, but she was shutting me down. Well, don't you know, the next day she emails my assistant. Oh, I think I knew. Yeah. I know now. Yeah. I'm not in that realm anymore. I can't give her now.
And that's the tough part because it is physically and emotionally. Like for me, getting to the gym is important. Finding joy in every
the workout. That's right.
Or playing my guitar badly.
You play guitar? I keep wanting to relearn. I used to play in church and I have a broken string. I didn't know you. Oh my God, we have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I play guitar badly. Every Friday morning, I have a guitar lesson in my studio. And it's, I usually take Janice, which is my travel guitar with me. She's a little GS Mini mahogany Taylor. And this is actually the first trip I didn't take her to Florida with me. I was far too busy and didn't have a chance. So I'm sorry in advance to my teacher tomorrow because it's going to sound like I haven't played in a couple of days anyway. But so you work out and enjoy. Is it gardening? Is it something fun? Is there, something?
I'm about to take a Zoom mosaics class with a really amazing mosaic artist. She said she'd train me one-on-one. I love art. I love painting. I have a sewing machine that I haven't picked up in like 6 months. I keep saying I'm going to go back to learning back into quilting again. I joined 2 botanical gardens that I love, that I go to as often as possible. I find healing with trees. I really gravitate nature and trees and breathing in the trees, and meditation and prayer have saved my life. I mean, the anxiety was so bizarre before I became a medium, and I didn't understand it. And when I started to meditate, I never had another panic attack again.
There's an interesting book that I'm about to read by the spiritual counselor for Therese Caputo, Pat Longo.
Yeah.
The
Pat Longo.
The medium
anxiety, the gifts beneath your anxiety, right?
Yes, and I haven't read it yet. I heard it's amazing. I in fact bought it.
Pat is a
I can't. I would love to meet her. I just think the world of her I've been drawn to.
I gotta introduce.
Would love. In fact, I gave my daughter that book and sent it to her because she's highly empathic, and it can, our this ability can show first surface as anxiety. But I'm looking forward to reading that. Susan, it's been a joy. I want to talk about something before we end our lovely chat together here. We have an ability. We're working together for an upcoming holiday mediumship gallery. It's going to be Thursday, December 12th. It's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific time and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because you're in California and I'm on the other coast. And we're going to chat with as many angels and possibly fur babies, I bet, because they often, for me, show up with your loved ones. I'm really looking forward to this event and working with you.
Oh, me too. You're such a doll, Kim, and I really enjoyed speaking with you.
So tickets can be found either at Susan Allen Medium or at kimdorham.com. Again, Susan Allen, you're an amazing medium and an animal communicator. I really appreciate you being on Mediumship Moments with us today. And I look forward to chatting with you soon. But as I always end my mediumship moments with, I often say, chat with your angels because they can hear you, whether they're fur babies or not.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another episode of Mediumship Moments. If you enjoyed this episode of Kim's podcast, check her out on Instagram and TikTok at Kim Dorham Medium.